Liquor Talk, another episode starts now. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Liquor Talk podcast, the podcast where we don't just sip liquor, but we have conversations that start a culture. I'm your man, Victor. Thank you for joining me on this Podmatch Sunday. I know it's Super Bowl Sunday. Everybody's getting ready for the big game, you know, whether you're a Patriots fan or you're a Seahawks fan, or whether your team got knocked out in the playoffs like mine did. Hope you guys enjoy the big game. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to check out this episode. I know I done dropped 3 episodes on you today, but joining me from North Carolina, we got a sex and intimacy coach joining us today. Coach Xanet Pailet joins us today, holding it down North Carolina. I know it's cold where you're at, and I hope the intimacy warms you up. But how you doing tonight?
I am doing well. Thank you so much. And sorry about, was it the Buccaneers? I'm really bad with football. Is that it? The Tampa Buccaneers?
Yes,
right?
good.
Did I
You
get
got
it?
You got it. You got it. Yes, listen. Yes, and the Bucks went home. You know, they ain't make the playoffs. I know you're located in North Carolina. The Carolina Panthers got to the playoffs and got bounced in the first round. So,
I didn't even know that.
so for all you fans of certain teams, don't come at me when your team's sitting at home. So, hey, this is what it is. All right, so tell us a little about what you do, because I'm saying you're a sex and intimacy coach. Tell us a little about that.
So I'm a sex and intimacy educator and coach, Victor, and everybody out there. Hopefully having your drinks. I'm just drinking fizzy water. And as a sex and intimacy educator, and really as a coach, I really focus on working with individuals, but now primarily couples, who really are having a lot of challenges in their relationship around intimacy, having sexual challenges in their relationships. And I help them understand why they're having those challenges. And then I help them learn how to overcome them through, both understanding where some of the blocks are coming from in terms of maybe some of their own childhood stuff, but also in the relationship, and then providing a lot of experiences for them. My work is very interactive and experiential, so that they learn lots of new tools and skills to be able to really create the sex life and the intimate life that they want to have.
Wow. Now that's a lot to unpack, but I do got to ask this question because I was reading through your profile. Shout out to our friends at Podmatch who give us in-depth profiles as well. So shout out to them as well. I understand you went from being a healthcare attorney to a sex and intimacy coach.
Sure.
That is like 2 different worlds right there. How in the world did that happen? Please elaborate.
It is an interesting journey, and not one that I really anticipated going on, to be honest with you. So I went to law school, got married, graduated from law school, got married the next weekend, and started doing healthcare law. But what, I wasn't aware of as much is that I would end up being in a sexless marriage for over 26 years. Yeah, I know, right? It's a long
26 years without sex?
I know. Well, maybe like 20, but not a lot of sex. Like, as we define a sexless marriage, it's sex less than 10 times a year. So really, honestly, if you really look at it, literally, I was in a sexless marriage for all 26 years. I do have 2 boys, so there was some sex that happened, but not a lot. And for a lot of different reasons, part of it is, as is true for a lot of people who do show up with a lot of sexual challenges, I had a lot of different types of trauma in my childhood that had an impact on how I felt about my body, how I felt about sexuality. It was scary for me. I was very anxious around it. And I never could really relax and enjoy it. I never had pleasure. And I thought that would all change when I got married. And guess what? It didn't. And there was really no one to talk to about it. It wasn't something that I could talk about with my partner. I mean, we fought about it. I cried a lot about it. It was there was a lot of drama associated with it. And so, I was just like, okay, well, I don't want to do this. This isn't fun for us. Like, we've had our two kids. We're just going to stop. Not that that was a conscious conversation that we had. We never talked about that. It just happened pretty quickly. And, when that happens in a relationship, when the sex dies, very often the intimacy dies. Any emotional connection that we had died with it as well. And we kind of became like roommates. No, we did become roommates who were very good parents. We were a very good parental unit. We did had a lot of fun with our kids. We had a very interesting life outside of our bedroom. But that was kind of the way it went. We just were roommates living under the same roof, which, to be honest with you, is a lot more common than you would think.
Yeah, I've heard those stories about people not really having sex when they get older, but then I hear the opposite stories of people having sex when they get older. Like, have you heard of the villages in Florida and how the villages have the highest HIV rate? So
I
something is
know.
going on. So it's a lot of extremes to unpack here. So how does one stay in a marriage without sex for 20 something years and not investigated? Like, did y'all think to go to a sex therapist, go to a
No,
sex coach, or go to
no,
the adult stores?
no,
Something.
no. Like I said, I mean, and I think this is kind of the pattern that happens. It just kind of quietly fades. It's uncomfortable. There was no seeming solution to it, right? I hated sex. It was miserable for me. It ended up becoming miserable for him because it was miserable for me. And I don't know. I guess like for me, it wasn't that important. It's not like I had had amazing sex and then all of a sudden sex sucked. It's like sex always sucked, right? And so I was just like, yeah, I don't know what all of this is about, but this is not doing it for me. And for whatever reason, my ex-husband at the time, um, I mean, he was busy. We were busy with kids, raising kids, doing other stuff, and I guess we just swept it under the rug like so many people do and never addressed it. And no, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a sex therapist. I was scared to even look at it. Like, I had a lot of trauma around it, right? So it wasn't like, oh, this is something I really want to take a deep dive in. Like, fuck no. Like, sorry. Shouldn't say that.
It's okay. You
But
good. You good. You good. You good. It's okay. So, at what point did you say I'm gonna get over this and become a sex therapist? And become a sex therapist and become a sex coach? Was it like you didn't want to just look it up one day, or were you trying to prepare yourself for the next person?
yes, I think it was the latter. That the marriage, which had been hanging on with threads anyway, ended when our youngest son was in his freshman year in college. So at that point, we were like, we're empty nesters. We've done our job. We got them both in college. Let's call it quits, which I think we were both very happy about. And and then consequently, I was young. I was 50 years old. I got married when I was 24, right? So I was 50 years old at the time, which is pretty young. And I knew that I wanted to date. I maybe wanted to get married again at some point. I think I'm very relationship focused. I like being in a relationship, I don't like being that much by myself. Although I did spend a lot of time alone after that divorce. And I also knew that, like, well, hell, I'm gonna have to do something about this. Like, I can't go out in the dating pool. Like, can you see what it looks like? you know, Attractive woman, smart, intelligent, successful, yada yada, but you just can't have sex with her. Like, that just wasn't gonna go over, right? And so that forced me to actually like take a really hard look, finally. And I think also at that point I had some more spaciousness in my life, like the drama of the marriage, which as marriages are ending can be very dramatic. The drama of the marriage, all of the tension, all of that stuff, the kids being in college, just gave me a little more time and spaciousness to be able to like take a hard look and say like, "Ooh." Xanet, what is going on here? We got to fix this. And that was really my choice. It's like, I got to take a hard look at this. That's what I did. But I didn't become a sex coach. I'm not a therapist. I thought about going, back to get a master's, when I was like, yeah, I got enough degrees. I don't need any more. And also what I knew about therapy, I wasn't super excited about. I don't know, it just didn't feel like the right direction for me. And, my own journey from leaving my marriage, I was living in New York City at the time, left New York, moved to California, where it's a very much more sex positive environment. A lot of the teachers, the training programs, the gurus were out there. It took me into, excuse me, my own journey of like sexual healing and sexual awakening. And as I started to really get involved in that and started to see the changes happening in my body and in my life, I made, at some point, after I did a bunch of different trainings for a year and a half or so, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I just switched my whole focus. I wasn't a lawyer at that point. At that point, sorry, been a long day. I've done a lot of talking. Hope you can edit this out. Um, um, so I wasn't a lawyer at that point. I was doing other stuff in the healthcare field, at an executive level, and that wasn't super fulfilling to me either. And I was ready for a change. Like when you make a serious transition like that, there's a tendency to change everything, not just one thing. You move to a new city, you start look at a new career, you're changing yourself. Like it's a whole very holistic, I think, transition that happened for me. And that was, kind of what happened. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, I'm really changing. Things are shifting for me. I'm starting to feel pleasure in my body. I'm enjoying sex. I get it now. I see what it's all about. And I feel like there's so many people who are suffering, right? And who had nobody to talk to. And at that time, when was that? I don't know, 2000s, there wasn't as much conversation around it as there is now. There weren't like a million podcasts talking about sex or YouTube channels or advertising on Facebook. Like that, just none of that was there. And so I just really wanted to help other people, couples, women, men who were in a similar situation as I was, and, to be there for them. That's really how it all evolved.
Wow. Wow, I'm glad it was able to evolve for you. So, what's something you learned along the way that you hope to pass along to other people who go through similar journeys of not liking to have sex or not enjoying sex? And, what's some things you want to pass along to them? And what are some ways that they can start to enjoy sex?
Yeah, well, I think for starters, like, I think I want everyone to know, to understand, because I didn't really understand it, Victor, that, pleasure is our birthright. Like, you were put on this earth to experience pleasure in your body and pleasure in your life as well. And if you're not having that, like, you owe it to yourself to do something about it, right? To take a look at it, to go get help, to read some books, to watch some videos, like whatever it is, listen to podcasts, to start to understand, like, oh, this isn't actually normal, and I need to actually start to make some changes in my life. And then, I think also for people to understand that um, mm, that if you're having challenges around sex, there's a good chance, there's a good chance that there's some trauma involved, whether you know it or you don't know it. Because that is, people who have experienced sexual abuse or any type of abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, so many people have. Um, Food insecurity, like I could go on and on. Um, that actually has a huge impact on how you feel in your body and what safety feels like for you. So, in order to really enjoy sex, you have to really feel safe in your body. I mean, that's not to say you can't have sex and not feel safe in your body. Many people do, but it's from a more disconnected, dissociative state. But to really enjoy sex, you need to feel safe in your body. And if you're not feeling safe in your body, then you need to understand where that's coming from and what safety actually feels like. And I think that's something that people who have experienced trauma know that maybe at some level. Like they'll say to me, I don't feel safe, but they don't know what safety actually feels like and how to actually get to that place. So that's another thing I would want to pass along. And as well, like for people to know that, you know, there are a lot of resources out there and people who can help you who are well trained, especially now in 2026. You know, we're training thousands coaches from a variety of different programs who are well versed and who are trauma informed and know what they're saying and know what they're doing. And you should go look for some support. And at all different levels, they do workshops, they have books, they do one on one coaching, right? And that all of that is actually out there and available. So those are some of the things I would pass along from like my own personal experience of the messages that I wish I had heard when I was 28, 30, 32, 35.
Of course, of course. Those are all definitely some good messages, and people need to take note of that. Ladies and gentlemen,
Right.
this is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts at. And once again, thank you to our friends at Podmatch for bringing us this guest today. Now, Xanet, you talk about being in a 26-year sexless marriage. How did that experience shape your work today?
Yeah, so it shaped my work a lot, right? Because for one, I really, really understand what it's like to be in a sexless marriage, which I don't think a lot of people do. Like, I understand the loneliness that you feel. I understand how broken you feel, like there's just something wrong with you, which is what I felt like I was just broken. Like, I can't do sex, I'm broken. Um, I understand how hard it is to have those conversations. So, all of that lived experience that I have, as well as the healing part of it, really helps me to relate to and identify with the people who walk in through my door, right? So, I'm not not to say there's anything wrong with this, but I'm not like, a 25-year-old who just loves sex and wants to be like a sex coach. I'm actually somebody who has had the lived experience of the pain of being disconnected from your body, disconnected from your pleasure, disconnected from your partner. And I think that just makes me a more relatable, better coach because people look at me and they're like, oh, wow, okay, she did that for 26 years and now she's 65 years old and has been having amazing sex and a relationship for the last 15 years. So if she could do that at age 50, I can do it at age 40, at age 60, right? Like, I think it gives people a lot of hope that there's no deadline, if you will, for improving your sex life.
Wow. I'm glad to hear that because I always hear stories about how men might get ED up there in their 40s or how women might lose desire in their 40s and 50s. But I'm glad you're preaching a totally different tone to the younger generation.
And to the older generation as well, right? Because I work with a lot of long-term couples who have been in relationships for 20 years, 25, 30 years, 35 years. Like, those are a lot of the people that walk in my door, and they also need to relearn, right, that desire hasn't gone away, it's just been buried, and they need to learn how to rediscover it again and rediscover the eroticism in their relationship and the connection that brought them together in the first place. So I think it's a ageless kind of preaching.
Of course, it's definitely ageless preaching. So, at what
Right.
point should couples seek the help? when it comes to seeking a sex therapist? Does it have to be when you're not having sex enough, or is it when the sex starts to fizzle out? It might be good one night, but then it starts to decline. At what point should people talk to somebody about it?
Well, I think first of all, you should start talking to your partner about it. That's the first place to start, right? Like to start to have a conversation with each other about, like, hey, I'm noticing that, we're just not having sex as often as we used to. How are you feeling about that? Is anything going on for you, right? You always really want to start that communication with a partner because sometimes you can resolve those issues, right? Sometimes if you have good communication to begin with, you you figure out what's actually going on, right? Like, oh, maybe it's, I don't know, like I've been super tired lately, and maybe, this is a big issue for couples. Like, we need to find a better time to have sex, right? Because, like, I'm a morning person and you're a night person. And so sometimes it's as simple as those kind of fixes, right? It's a scheduling issue, literally. Um, so
A
I always
scheduling
ask them.
issue. The reason I wonder, I'm like, who the hell is gonna turn down some sex, man? Come on, man.
Where they are. It becomes a scheduling issue at times, right? But when it's really persistent, like when you notice there's a pattern, like if you haven't had sex for, I would say, 4 months, 5 months, certainly 6 months. And there's no like extenuating circumstances. It's not like somebody's had surgery or you've just had a baby or whatever, but it's just like you're in the middle of your life and you're not having sex. Then I think it's definitely appropriate to start to be asking some questions. And if you can't resolve it with your partner and it feels like there's a lot of tension and drama, which it often does when you bring this up because it's a very tender subject for a lot of people, then I think it's time to go seek some support. Seeing a sex coach, a therapist, somebody who has more experience than you can then help can really unpack and diagnose, if you will. I don't like to word that diagnose, but inform what they think is actually going on based on what's happening. And a lot of times, Victor, um, your sex life dies or sex lives die. Let me put it this way: challenges in sex, not having sex, not enjoying sex, having sexual challenges is often really just a symptom of problems in the relationship itself that are not going well.
Mm. You know, I agree with that. I feel that. But another problem I will say is why do people, instead of addressing these challenges, they go out and cheat? They will go out and go cheat on somebody else they can get their pleasure from somebody else. So have you experienced that with couples that you notice
Sure.
that may have just gone out and gone
Yeah.
cheat instead of just going to, figure out what the root of the problem is?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty common. That's one of the big reasons that people get divorced, right? That people stray from the marriage because usually because they're not having sex with their partner. And typically, there's also been some conflict in that relationship as well. It doesn't feel like a very fun place to be, it doesn't feel like a very safe place to be. And they go and get their needs met outside of the marriage. I think that's a very common experience, a fairly common experience, and I've certainly worked with a lot of couples who have experienced betrayal and affairs when their sex life falls apart. That is a common experience, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. So why do those couples just don't break up instead of just staying together? It's like I know we're in a tough time with the economy and stuff, but I'm of the age I'd rather just stop wasting time and just go it alone instead of being with somebody who I know doesn't really want to be with me and is getting satisfied from someone else.
Well, I think a lot of times it's not disclosed, right? A lot of times you don't know that your partner is having an affair until maybe it shows up. And, I mean, why people have affairs is there's a lot of potential reasons for that to happen. But often there's still a lot of love in that primary relationship, right? There's still a lot of love, there's connection. Sometimes there's children, small children that are involved as well. And I think couples are afraid, just like I was, of the consequences to the kids if they break up. And, sometimes somebody will go outside of the marriage to get some needs met, but they're not always getting that emotional need met. And they still feel a lot of people really believe in the sanctity of marriage, right? Especially in, more faith-based couples. They really believe in the sanctity of marriage and they want to work on repairing it. So I think that's why you see people that are staying together, but then they go into counseling and they try to figure out, can we make it? And sometimes they can, but sometimes they can't.
Yeah, agreed. Sometimes they can and sometimes they can't. But if you can't, just don't waste the years because you'd hate to look back at your life and you like, I really wasted 20 something years with this person and I was not getting fulfilled and we weren't doing nothing. Because you can look back and have some regrets. And I'd hate for that
Yeah,
to be you out there listening.
totally. You can totally, I mean, I certainly had some regrets, looking back, and it's complicated, right? Because I also was like, there were some things that were really good about having two parents at home. So, everybody has to make the decision that feels, you know right for them, for sure. I don't have a position one way or another. Whoever walks in my office with whatever they show up with, I'm like, I'm here. I'm going to support you. We're going to work with it. But you have to make the decision that feels right for you. Certainly, if there are no children involved, it's a lot easier to get at to leave. It would be my experience and what I've seen with all the couples that I've worked with.
So, based on with all the couples you worked with in 2025, what is a common theme that you've noticed with all of them that you hope that they work on and you hope anybody listening to this will work on in their relationship?
Okay, so there's a bunch, but I would say one of the most common experiences that I see with couples is bad communication, right? That they're not really talking to each other. And that happens for a variety of reasons, right? It could be that they feel ashamed to talk about it, to bring it up, but a lot of times it happens because they are not really emotionally, they don't feel emotionally safe in the relationship itself, right? Like they feel like if I bring this up, my partner is going to either, shame me or judge me or manipulate me or use it against me. And so there's not a lot of safety in the relationship itself. And there are a lot of ways, I have a new book that just came out, the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, how to enhance communication and create a lifetime of passionate intimacy. And that book is really focused on helping couples create the emotional foundation, or the foundation for a healthy sex life, which really starts at creating the emotional connection, the emotional safety, being really vulnerable and open with each other. So, learning some of those skills, like what is it like to just listen to your partner and hear them out without having to defend yourself or to criticize, right? Learning what attunement meaning like, how do I get on the same page, the same wavelength with my partner? Those are all skills that I teach. Learning empathetic listening, can I just hear what they're saying and reflect back what I hear they're saying? Can I not invalidate my partner? So by invalidation, you basically tell them that what they're trying to express to you doesn't make sense, or you try to fix it, right? Because it's hard for you to hear that they're troubled and in pain, and you're just trying to fix it, but it doesn't make them feel like they're being heard. And they're being seen. And that's what we all want as human beings, right? We want to be heard. We want to be seen. We want to be respected, right? We don't want somebody to tell us, you can't feel that way. That doesn't make any sense. Like that feels horrible, right? That's
Right.
like, whoa, whoa, wait a second, buddy. Like, wait a second. That makes me feel like shit. And so those are the kind of, issues that I see showing up, from the emotional, like the lack of the foundation of the emotional connection and taking risks and being vulnerable with each other, which can be really scary, right? But it creates a lot more intimacy. And that's what I'm all about, like getting people to learn how to create that intimacy. So then sexuality will start flowing from that in a much more organic way.
Wow. So basically, it sounds like it's a lot of communication, a lot of mental issues, nothing to do with physical.
That's not true. There are definitely physical things as well. There are very specific skills that I'm constantly teaching couples. So, different ways to touch their partners, because often we'll do something, or I'll see like somebody touching their partner in a way that just doesn't feel good for that other person, right? It's annoying. Um, Slowing everything down. Sex often happens super, super fast, super quick. A lot of people, particularly women, need more time for warm up. We want things to be a little bit slower. Understanding all of the different types of sexual styles that are out there. There's a whole bunch of them, right?
Really?
Understanding what yours, yeah, like understanding what your sexual style is and what your partner's sexual style is, and having an opportunity to explore, what that actually looks like. There's just a whole lot of physical issues, physical things that couples actually tend to need support and practice with. And that's what I do, in my work with couples on my retreats. Like I really give them an experience where they get to try different things, try different touches, focus on like, what does passionate touch look like? What does soft, sensual touch look like? What does, playing in the world of a little bit of bondage or restraints look like? Is that something that feels good for your partner? So there's a lot of things on the sexual side, but here's my point. Just working on the sexual piece doesn't actually really fix the relationship. It doesn't, because you've got to have the safety. You've got to have that foundation. You've got to know that, if something doesn't work, your partner's not going to go tell their girlfriends about it. And, it's going to come up the next time you're at a dinner party with everybody, right? Like, that's not cool. So that's why, I think about it not being as a quick fix, but being at as making sure that the foundation for the relationship, the emotional component, is really solid. And then all of these other fun tools and techniques and sexual styles and fantasies and turn ons and all of that feels really safe to be able to explore with a partner.
That's real, and I feel all that. And now, from a man's point of view, I definitely feel the safety as well. Because us men, we want to be heard too. We want to know that y'all gonna hear us out and really work on this instead of telling your girls and you in your group chat. Because what I realize is a lot of them group chats, you got a lot of people who are probably single, who aren't in relationships, who might tell you some things to bring the relationship down, and a lot of times those group chats don't have the voice of reason.
Right. True. And, it's confidential information that you're sharing, right? That you really want to be careful about that, right? I think I try to get couples to understand like this, the relationship, there's a sanctity around that relationship. And what happens in the bedroom and in the relationship is really personal between them and maybe their therapist, right? But,
Yes.
but not everybody else.
Yes. Now I will say that it should be like that, but I've seen some couples that they go on podcasts talking about their sex life. I'm
I
like,
know.
y'all some bold people just
I
opening
know.
to get on the mic and talk about your sex life. Y'all are really bold.
But that's a choice, right? Like that's a choice that they both make. There's a lot of consent there. They know, the consequences of doing that. They might get doxxed. Who knows, right? But that's different than putting it on a group chat or bitching, to your your girlfriends, usually it's often women that are doing this, right? Bitching to your your female friends or bitching to your male friends about it, right? That's just a different experience.
Yeah, it is a different experience. Now, why do some of these women they bitch to everybody except their man? Like that should be the person you bitching to, not everybody in the group chat.
Yeah, and I think that's because they don't feel safe doing that, right? Like
Hmm.
they feel risky, like, oh, I might say something that's going to upset him, that's going to hurt his ego, that's going to chase him away, that's going to, make him want to go have an affair. Like, who knows, right? There's a lot of fear around it because there's hasn't, again, been, as strong a foundation, as strong a foundation for intimacy as there could have been, and it's easier to like go talk to your friends than it is to like look at your partner in the eyes and say like, whoa, like what happened last night, like that didn't feel really good for me. That's a hard thing to say.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to say, and
I know.
it's like it's a hard thing to say, but I know from a man's point of view, it may be hard to hear, but I'd respect it. They'll tell me that, hey, either I need to fix some things or we need to sit down and figure this thing out. And that's how you know you got somebody. If you that want to sit down and figure it out
That's right.
instead of saying to hell with you because I can go satisfy somebody else. But the one thing I've learned the hard way is not every woman is the same. What you do with one cannot satisfy the other one.
Totally true. Every woman is different, and not only is every woman different, but like women's arousal changes from hour to hour and day to day.
Mm.
It is just the way I think women's bodies are built. That what worked one day may not work the next day. And that's, I think, one of the places where people get in trouble because they just make this, they think that sex is science. If I do A and B and C, I'm going to have this result, D. But it's not true. Sex is actually not science, it's art, right? And like art, it needs to flow. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. One day it's going to be super messy, one day it's going to be like fine lines. And I think kind of understanding that we all have this like assumption that ABC is going to always equal D, 2 and 2 is not always going to equal 4. 2 and 2 is sometimes going to equal 10, and sometimes it's going to be -7. It's just the
So
way.
basically you just got to have patience with how it flows
Yeah.
because it's like one day it might be amazing and then but the next day it's like what are you doing, you know?
Yes, exactly. And that is, just because bodies change and desires change, and and I'll say this because I bet you have a fair amount of men listening to this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
That to the guys out there, like women are women get bored pretty quickly,
Yes, that's a fact. Y'all get bored super quickly.
super quickly. So it's got to be kept different and interesting and exciting, and it could be something as simple as like instead of having sex in the bedroom, you're having sex, in the living room or in the kitchen or in the shower, right? But like really understand that women get bored really easily. I mean, I see men all the time who are like, well, I'm totally happy, like, we could just be in missionary station position all the time, that's all I need, I'm good. And the women are just sitting there like, yeah, no, like that's not going to work for me anymore. And so really understanding that, and again, I think that's just sort of part of our DNA.
Wait, there are really men out there that just want to stay a missionary? Now I've
Yeah.
heard some women doing that too, but why do people just want to stay in one position? Like there are 50 million sex positions. Why they just want to stay in the one or two positions?
I don't know that necessarily always. I think a lot of people come in thinking like the way to improve their sex life is to have like 50 different positions, and this is not true. The way to improve your sex life is to really like slow everything down, explore different types of ways to connect with each other erotically. Yeah, positions can be fun, they can be definitely interesting, but I don't know that that's enough juice to actually really like have a fantastic sex life. At least that's my personal experience, and that's my experience with the hundreds of clients that I've worked with. But everybody thinks that's going to make a difference. Not.
I understand, definitely not. So
Mm-mm.
now I understand that women want to slow things down. Now, what do you do if you're in a time crunch? Like you looking at her, she's looking damn beautiful. I'm like, babe, I want you, but I know I got this meeting. I know she got to be somewhere. What's the best way to navigate that? What's the best way to navigate quickies?
I mean, I think quickies are, great when they're interspersed with longer times for connection, right? If it's just a quickie all the time, and the if you look at some of the research and data on foreplay, you'll see that like the majority of couples are having sex. They're going from foreplay is like 5 to 7 minutes, which is like not even enough time for me to even think about like feeling anything really in my body. That's just the way I work. So quickies can be great, right? Especially if you're in a time crunch, if the kids are next door, they just went down for a nap and you're like, we've got 5 minutes, let's do it. I just think you need to be really aware that for many women, this is not true for all women, but for many women, for most women, we really need a longer period of time to feel super turned on and aroused. So that doesn't mean that sex isn't going to work, but it is going to mean that it's not going to feel great. They're not going to be at their highest level of um, desire. They're not going to be at their highest erotic level, their highest level of arousal. Probably won't have an orgasm. Is really not enough time for that, even close, right? So those are just things to be aware of.
Of course, those are definitely some things to be aware of. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. I hope you guys are enjoying this sex talk on Super Bowl Sunday or whenever you're listening to this, because we need to have more of these sex talks. I'm sorry, because it's too many people out here not being satisfied in their relationships or in their sex life. So, for people out there, what is a good way to start the conversation about your sex life?
So, what I suggest is I've actually created a tool that can be really helpful for people because sometimes it is a hard conversation, right? To start. There's it's tender. There's a lot of you're afraid of opening up Pandora's box because you don't know what's going to come out. And so I've created a tool. It's called an intimacy equation quiz where it's like a little Facebook, or Instagram kind of quiz where you 3 minute quiz and you look at you learn what your intimacy formula is. And there's a bunch of different formulas. Like there are people that are more like emotionally focused and people that are more adventuresome and people where like trust and safety is really important. Like the idea of being safe and warm and cuddly is more important in people who are more like centrally focused. And it's a really nice way. You take the little quiz, it's 3 minutes, it's kind of cute, it's got little gifts on it. And then you get the results. There's no cost to it, it's a free gift. I'm going to tell you all where to get it. And then you go to your partner and you say, like, hey, I took this like fun little quiz. It was kind of like a Facebook quiz to understand my intimacy equation, my style. Would you like to take yours? Would you like to take it? I'm kind of curious about what yours is as well. And that's a really safe way to start the conversation. So it's not like, hey, we need to have a talk about our sex life, right? Which can be really scary and a big risk. But it's more like, hey, I took this quiz. I'm kind of curious this is what I found about me. I'm curious about what you're going to find out about you. And that opens up the conversation in a much lower stakes space, which I think is really important so that you don't end up getting into conflict or feeling like overwhelmed and you don't know where to go with it. So that's what I recommend. And you can find that quiz, y'all, at my website or this website, which is howtoimprovemylovelife.com. Howtoimprovemylovelife.com. You should take it, Victor.
I probably should take it. You're right. That's interesting. I probably should take it. Everybody that listening should probably go take this quiz. So,
Absolutely.
now what is your advice to people who go long periods of time without physical intimacy? Because sometimes it be tough out here to get physical intimacy, and it's like, what's your advice to people who go long periods of time without the physical intimacy, and then let's say you go on a date and things pick up, and things start to happen. So, what's your advice to people who go long periods of time without, physical intimacy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty common. I mean, personally, I always become celibate between relationships. And so in all of the relationships I've had over the last 10 years, really, because I've been in one for 5 years now, after we break up, like, I'm just like really kind of not interested in men. I'm not interested in women. I'm not interested in sex. I'm just like, yeah, I think I just need to like come back into myself and, just and eventually like that will come back, right? That doesn't mean that if you're not having sex with another person, you can't be having sex with yourself. I think that's important I think masturbation is important. Having a practice where you do that is important. You don't, unless that's something you don't want to do or you don't feel comfortable doing. And, you know, I would say that um, that would also help when you do start dating again. It won't be this like, oh my God, like, I finally have candy and I've been deprived of candy for 6 months. Like, it still allows you to like take it slow and go at the pace that feels comfortable for your partner as well, right? Like, not tearing somebody's clothes out the first night off because you haven't had sex in 6 months. That might not work. It might, but it might not work. So, my recommendation is to, during those periods of celibacy, to take care of yourself, like make sure that you're doing a self-loving practice, that you're masturbating, that you're taking, practicing all sorts of different types of self-care, whatever that means to you. And then just trust that your libido, if it feels like it's fallen off the cliff, which sometimes it does, will come back when the conditions are right and your body is ready for it.
Of course, of course. Now, how much masturbation is too much masturbation? Because I remember watching this movie called Don John, I believe it was, and the guy he beat off a lot, and he got desensitized to an actual person. So, how much of masturbation could be too much between whether it's a man or a woman?
So that's a really interesting question. And wow, I could talk about that for a long time. So I don't think there's any like right or wrong here. I do think that, when we think about like addiction, which is I think what you're talking about, when we think about addiction, we're thinking about is this an activity, whether it's alcohol or masturbation or watching porn or smoking pot, is this an activity that is actually beginning to interfere with your daily activities, right? So if it's starting to interfere with your daily activities because like, you're leaving the office to go and masturbate or you're leaving your desk to go and masturbate, during work 4 times a day, that's interfering with your daily activities, right? Generally, though, I think like, if you masturbate once a day, I think that's fine. I think it's normal. I think it just, everybody has different libidos. And for some people, masturbation is less about a turn on and more about it's a self soothing practice, right? It like relaxes you. For a lot of men, for a lot of women, like to masturbate before they go to bed because it allows them to relax as well. There's a whole release of, of different hormones that come through masturbation, that also settles the nervous system for some people. So, I don't have, one thing you'll learn about me if we get to talk again is like I'm very judgment free. I really don't make judgments unless I think it's really harming somebody. And I'm a fan of masturbation. Let's just say I think it's a really healthy thing to do. You get to learn your body better. You understand your arousal pattern better. You learn your turn-ons better. You can show your partner what you like. I think it's very healthy and important.
Okay, and I feel all that. I definitely feel all that. So, what is some advice you want to give to the people? We'll start with the singles. What's your advice you want to give to the single people for the start of for 2026? Because a lot of single people complain about the dating pool, and
I
they
know.
complain about just going out here having one night stands here and there. So, what's some wisdom you want to give to the single people?
Okay, you did see my message, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
We
All
wrapping up.
right.
We
Okay.
wrapping up.
To single people, I guess I would say have faith. I know that the dating pool is really challenging. I know online dating has become really challenging for a lot of people, and I appreciate that. But I would say find, if online dating isn't working for you, like find places where you can actually meet people. Going to, like, I don't know, karaoke nights if that's something that you're interested in, going to meetup groups, you're in Florida, joining a bike club, right, where you can actually meet other people one on one, because I think you'll have a different experience with that. That's my single people advice. To the couples, I would say if things are starting to, to fan out, or the fire starts going away, I would start asking questions about that, and with your partner start exploring different things. Listen to some different podcasts, watch some YouTube videos, maybe take a workshop on, I don't know, how to give a sensual massage. There's lots of workshops that are out there. Go to a sex store, a toy store, and pick something out, but do something different, and don't be afraid to push the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And lastly, why should people contact you and hire you as their sex coach?
The best way to contact me is through my website, which is passionateintimacyretreats.com. That's with an S, passionateintimacyretreats.com. There you can find out how to work with me, how to come on one of my retreats, and how to buy my books.
Of course, of course. Lastly, what is your call to action for everybody listening to this?
My call to action is take a step towards improving your sex life, whatever that is.
Yes, take that step for whatever that is, whatever that looks like. Xanet, I want to thank you for blessing the Liquor Talk with your presence. I know you're on a time crunch, but I definitely want to thank you for blessing the Liquor Talk with your presence. Thank you for giving us the wisdom. Thank you for coming to have a drink with me. Remember, if you ever want to collaborate again, might be in Florida, but I'm just a DM or a call away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a delightful conversation.
Yes, it was. And thank you to the listeners of the Liquor Talk podcast. Until the next episode, y'all remember to tune in, stay up. The season finale comes out on Wednesday. Until the next episode, peace, y'all. Peace.